So welcome to Consent Conversations Engaging and Involving Youth. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Erica Settles. I am a permanency training coordinator with the Texas Institute of Child and Family Wellbeing. I also have previous experience with Child Protective Services and conservatorship and adoptions as well. So this webinar is to provide guidance for child welfare professionals on how to obtain informed consent from youth who are participating in the Heart Gallery. It's okay if you don't memorize everything in this webinar, as we are going to record it for you and you will have it to refer back as needed. We also have a corresponding guide and resources to explain consent as well. And as I'll be referring to some of the resources throughout the webinar, I'll drop the link for the guide and resources in the chat for you, so you could pull them up on your screen directly if that's easier for you. Now, before we dive in, I do want to express my gratitude to the professionals with lived experience in foster care who gave us feedback on this information. So they helped us to understand what might be going on in the mind of a child who is in foster care when they're undergoing these experiences. So just keep that in mind as we explore this discussion and why we chose to incorporate the specific elements that we did. So the training objectives are to understand the importance of obtaining consent from youth featured in the Heart Gallery, to learn age-appropriate methods to explain consent to youth, and to develop practical skills for obtaining and documenting consent from youth. Now, just so we are all on the same page, in the event you don't know what the Heart Gallery is, the Heart Gallery aims to raise awareness about adoption and foster care by featuring portraits and stories of children to connect them to caring families and community networks. So Heart Gallery photos tell a child's story through the photographs. They try to capture the spirit, the individuality, and the interests of each child. And then those portraits are featured on the Heart Gallery website, potentially in social media, in physical community heart galleries as well, and or on local television. So just to make sure that you are familiar with how to navigate to your local Heart Gallery's website, I want to show you that. So it is heartgallerytexas.org, and you would just scroll down from the top of the page to find your local Heart Gallery here. And then that would take you to the map of the various regions, and then they are also listed here. So you would just select whichever region is your corresponding Heart Gallery, and that would take you to your Heart Gallery's website. Now, because children are at the heart of the Heart Gallery, we believe that it's our responsibility to make sure that each step of this process centers their perspective and that it values their autonomy. So to do this, it's important that children have an understanding of the adoption process before they're coming to their photo shoot. So children shouldn't ever arrive to a photo shoot without understanding why they are there and what is going to happen. So this webinar is not specifically going to cover obtaining consent for adoption, but it is going to equip you with the tools and knowledge to obtain a youth's consent to be featured in the Heart Gallery. Now, before we dive into the components of consent, I wanted to take a moment and get your input and ideas on what consent means to you. So if you could type a few words or a short sentence in the chat box to describe consent, and then I'll have Christopher read that off so we can engage in that conversation.
I'm seeing words of permission, agreeing to something, permission again, informed decision, informed permission. Permission seems to be a key word, which is great. Agreement, agreeing with full understanding.
Yeah, I think in all of these components actually are discussed in what we're about to review. So just love that you guys brought out all of those things. So in its simplest form, which is what I heard, consent means granting permission, right, for something to happen. So in the context of the Heart Gallery, gaining a child's consent means obtaining their permission or their agreement to be featured. So this could be agreement to having their photo taken, agreeing to having that photo featured online, agreeing to it being displayed in their community or in another town outside of their community if that's more comfortable for them, or agreeing to have it used on social media or local television. So before a youth can give verbal or written agreement, a few additional requirements have to be met. And I think some of you mentioned that as far as it being informed. So they must specifically understand what they are agreeing to, why it's necessary, and any potential impact or consequences as to their participation. So youth have to be given facts in a way that they can understand. So it has to be tailored to their age and their developmental level, or else they're not going to be able to necessarily grasp it, and they can't give their consent if they don't understand it. Also, consent has to be voluntary, right? So without pressure or manipulation. So youth can't be influenced to make that decision. So they must be given the information, and then they must grant permission of their own free will. And then, of course, another component of consent is that you can change your mind at any time. So youth have to know that they can retract that agreement at any point in time. So since participation in the Heart Gallery is ongoing, until their photo and story are removed from either the website or the community galleries, it's important to consider that it is an ongoing process. And so this should be revisited with youth at least yearly, more frequently if necessary, when their photos are updated, to make sure that whatever they previously agreed to still stands, or to see if they want to make some changes. Now I want to talk about why youth consent matters. So obtaining informed consent is fundamental to ethical adoption recruitment. So it's grounded in respect, right, for the rights, autonomy, and well-being of the child. So when kiddos enter foster care, they often have little to no control over what happens to them. So decisions about their lives and future are frequently made by adults, and that can leave them feeling powerless. And just like anyone else, children need to feel a sense of power and control to feel safe. But when they're consistently excluded from decision making, it undermines that sense of control and that feeling of safety. So when we involve them in the adoption recruitment process, we're addressing this power imbalance, and we're making sure that their voices are heard, that their preferences are respected. And this is ensuring that recruitment isn't just about finding a family for that child, but it's also about respecting the child and affirming their dignity as we are doing that along the way. Another reason why it matters is youth have a right to make decisions regarding their photos and stories. So specifically, every young person deserves to have control over how they are represented, especially when it comes to whether or not they want their image and their personal story shared with the public. Another reason consent matters is respecting a youth's perspective and autonomy supports their emotional well-being. So when we're listening and respecting a youth's choices, we're validating their feelings and their experiences. So this respect can enhance their sense of self-worth and their emotional security, and that just contributes to their overall well-being. So it's definitely crucial that youth feel heard and valued throughout the process. And then finally, it matters because involving youth in decisions fosters empowerment and connection to their adoption journey. So when we actively engage youth in decisions, it helps them feel more connected. So it empowers them to where they realize that they have ownership over their story and that they're active participants, that it's not just everything is happening to them, but they actually get to be part of it. So that sense of involvement with them can strengthen their confidence and engagement in their process and help them build trust with you as well. So essentially, consent benefits everyone and not just the youth themselves. So now that we understand consent and why it matters, let's dive into how we can help children considering their ages and developmental levels. So first, we're going to talk about our littlest ones. So here we're looking at about 5 to 7-year-olds. And things that we want to keep in mind for them is that they learn better through visual aids and role plays for this consent conversation. It's best with this age if we keep our words simple and our explanation short, and then we might want to consider spreading out the conversation over a few or even several meetings in a way that engages them. They feel comfortable. They're not just bored and checked out. And so we're going to kind of take that based on how they experience the conversation in deciding how many different meetings you might need to spread that out over. Now, when it comes to a visual aid, this could be most helpful, and you can use the text pop words and pictures explanation that you see here to explain consent. So this is featured on the website link that we initially put in the chat, and we'll put it at the end as well. It's one of the resources that you'll have access to. But essentially, words and pictures is a shared story, and it involves and speaks directly to children. So typically, this tool is developed over time when it comes to explaining the reasons for CPS involvement or when there's a big change in the case for kids. But we adapted the tool here to help you explain consent to young children. So you could use this example or you could adapt and create your own. And if you did want to make it more specific, you could definitely reach out to us for support in that, and you'll get my email at the end of the training. Another thing you could do besides the visual aid is a role play. Now here's the overview for the role play. So the scene would be that the child is at the park, they're playing with a toy, so you want to make sure you have a toy you can give them. And then another child is coming up and asking if they can play with them. And so the child has the option to say yes, or no, I want to play alone right now, or not right now, but maybe we can play later. So they have options in their response. And then you're going to explain at the end, when we ask before doing something, it shows we care how others feel. So to break that down, you could present it as I'll explain here, or in whatever way makes the most sense to you and the child that you're working with. So I'm not sure if you've watched children play in this age group, but they engage in cooperative play where they actually talk to each other about the role play scenarios, and then they even interject within the scenario to inform the other child. So they'll tell them, okay, I'm going to do this next, and I'm going to say this, and then you say this. And then the other child can go along with it, or they might say, no, I want to do this instead. And so they're working to create together to create their play as they're moving through it at the same time. So with the consent role play, you're going to engage in this cooperative play with the child, and it might look something like this. So you give them the toy and you tell them, we're going to pretend you are at the park playing with this toy. Where would you like to play with this toy at the park? And maybe they say on the playscape, or maybe they say in the sand. And so you would respond, okay, you can play in the sand. I'm going to be another kid at the park, and I'm going to see you in the sand, and I'm going to ask you a question, and you can respond however you want. And so the child says, okay, and they start playing with their toy. And as the child is playing with the toy in the park, you go up to them and say, hi, Sherry, or whatever the child's name is. My name is Maria. Can I play with you? And let the child respond and see what they say. And if they say yes, then you can play together through that scenario with them. If they say no, then you're going to want to respect their decision and role play through that scenario as well. And then when the entire role play is finished, you're going to explain afterward. When we ask before doing something, it shows we care about how others feel. How would you feel if Maria came up and took your toy away without asking? So you would explore that with them. And then maybe, how did you feel when she asked you? So you could also say, maybe sometimes you want to change your mind and you can play with your friend, but then later you tell them, okay, I don't want to play anymore. And that lets the kiddo know that they have the option to change their mind. So we want to keep in mind here that sometimes children do fear the repercussions of saying no, especially if it's with an authority figure. So you want to make sure that they do feel comfortable saying no if that is their response. So if you notice that maybe they're a little hesitant and maybe it seems like they want to say no, but they're afraid to, you could even do some practice with no in other scenarios they may encounter with you. So for instance, if you know something specific about this child so that when you do your monthly visit, they always want to go in the backyard and play while you guys talk, then you could intentionally ask on your visit, would you like to go in your room and chat today? Because you're assuming that they don't want to do that because they always want to go outside, right? So you're giving them the opportunity to say no. And maybe they're hesitant because they don't want to go to their room. They do want to go outside. And you notice that. So you could say, I notice you're hesitant. Is there somewhere else you'd like to go? And maybe they'll say, I want to go outside like we always do. And you could say, okay, no problem. Next time, if I ask you a question and the answer is no, it's okay to say that to me. And I won't be mad at you and I'll respect what you say. So this gives them the freedom to say no or to express their discomfort to you if that is not something they're already comfortable doing. And then you could do this in different scenarios. And after doing this repeatedly over time, they're going to become naturally more comfortable speaking up for what they want. Now, once you've navigated the consent conversation and you're sure the child understands consent, you're going to also need to make sure that they understand the purpose of the heart gallery itself before they can consent to being in the online photo listing or in the community heart galleries. So one of the things that you can do is show photos of children their age on your Heart Gallery's website. So navigating back to that site, like I showed you in the beginning, and going to your specific area's Heart Gallery. So you would take them to kids that are in their age group. And so you could tell them, first we took their pictures, then we got the photos off the camera, and we put them here on the internet. Do you know what the internet means? And if it's clear that they don't know the meaning of the internet, then you want to make sure you're explaining what, why, and the impact of the internet using a book analogy. And kids this age might think they have an idea of what the internet is, so you probably want to confirm it anyway. So a simple explanation using a book analogy could be something like the internet is like a big book that lots of people can see on their phones and computers. They can open their pages they want. They can look at the pictures and read the words just like in any other book. And when we take our photo, when we take your photo, excuse me, we put it here on the Heart Gallery internet page with your story. So adults who want to adopt can come look at the page to learn more about the kids here. And if your photo is on here, then those adults could see your photo too. Just like if someone opens a book, they can see all the books pages. And then you could say other people could come to that page and see you too, not just the people who are interested in. So you can kind of get them to see. You could even use a book, a physical book, to kind of show them through the pages what that would look like if anyone comes to the page. Just like they open a book and go to that page, they could see it, they could do the same thing. So you want to direct that conversation based on the child's understanding. Now, going back to our initial definition of consent, we see that just that short explanation involves telling the child what, why, and the potential impact. So the what here is you're explaining the internet using a book analogy. The why is so that adults who want to adopt can come look and learn more about the kids that are here. And then a potential impact is other people could also see their photo. So you want to make sure when you've explained the what, why, and the impact, that you also check for understanding by giving them the opportunity to explain it back to you in their own words. And then you can talk through things if you realize they're confused or maybe they don't quite get something until you're sure that they understand. And once you're certain that they understand, you want to, again, make it clear that it's their decision to participate and that they can say no without consequences. So that could be a conversation like, remember when we talked about consent the other day and I told you it's okay to say yes or no? Well, it's up to you if you want to be in the heart gallery. If you say yes, that's okay. And if you don't want to, that's okay too. And then, of course, once you're sure they understand, you ask the question specifically, would you like us to take your picture and share it here too? And then depending on how they respond, you can also be sure to let them know that they have the opportunity to change their mind as well. They're also going to need to be informed that their photo could be viewed by other people in the community. So that conversation might look different depending on what community you live in, where you guys feature photos typically. And then also, if children aren't feeling comfortable being in their own community, they can also be put in other heart galleries out of town. And then if they're going to have a video recorded for television, that's going to be a separate conversation that you'll need to have with them as well. So just making sure that you're gaining consent for each part of the process. Now, if they agree to be listed, you can let them know that they're going to have their picture taken by a photographer. And you're going to want to make sure you get consent for that photography as well. So you're going to explain to them, we're going to select a place to have your photo taken. Then either myself or your CASA worker or a transporter is going to drive you there. And a photographer is going to meet us there, and they're going to help us find a good spot for you to take your photos, and they will take pictures of you with their camera. So you're just kind of giving them an explanation of what they can expect for the process. And again, that's going to vary depending on your region, because I know that different regions do different scenarios for their photos. So just explain it in the way that your region does it. And you can, for this role play photography consent process with dolls specifically. So you could be the photographer. Of course, they could be the child. And that might look something like, today we're going to pretend we're at a photo shoot, so you know what to expect. I'm going to be the photographer and you just get to be yourself. And let's imagine we're at a fun park with trees and swings. And so then as the photographer, you might say, hi, my name is Erica. What's your name? Let them respond and then explain, I'm going to take photos of you today. Would you like to see how my camera works? And then you're going to show them a pretend camera and start telling them about it and see if they want to pretend. And then you're going to say, let's find a fun spot for photos. Would you like to go to the tree or the swing? And let them respond. And if they say the swing, for instance, great, let's walk over to the swing. Would you like to sit or swing while I take your photo? And then once the child responds, do whichever they prefer and continue to make them feel comfortable throughout the process. Now, because the photographer is not someone the child knows, it's important that they develop rapport and comfort with that specific photographer. And heart gallery photographers are trained on how to engage with children, but it's also important that the child knows ahead of time that the photographer is not going to make them do anything that makes them feel uncomfortable. So you want to demonstrate that the child can change their mind. So if you're pretending you're on the swing, as the photographer, you can tell the child, whenever you're done taking photos on the swing, you can tell me, I don't want to take photos on the swing anymore. And if you tell me you are done, we'll stop. And so that gives them the opportunity to know that they can stop when they're done. And then you also want to explore potential worries with them. So pay attention again to their body language, because sometimes a child this age isn't able to vocalize it or won't vocalize it. So if they seem hesitant to take a photo, you can explore that. Sometimes I feel nervous when people take my pictures. Do you feel nervous about it? And if so, you can process those feelings with them. And if not, you could explore what could be the cause for concern to try to alleviate those worries. So that could be done by asking open-ended questions and to understand their perspective. So like, what makes you nervous about getting your picture taken? You could also at this age use another tool we have, which is the 3 houses tool, to explore worries if needed. So this tool is also found on your resources, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. So this is the tool here. So you'll see it has a house of good things, a house of worries, a house of hopes and dreams. And so to adapt this for the heart gallery, you could, oops, I just navigated off of that. You could have the house of good things be what are the good things about being in the heart gallery. The house of worries would be used to explore their worries. And then the house of hopes and dreams would be to explore what they envision or would like to see happen. And the way that you do this when you're working with the child is by allowing them to kind of take the lead. So maybe you'll have crayons and giving them options as far as do they want to draw it or use words? Do they want you to draw it or you to write the words down as they're talking through it? And then you're also going to let them start in whichever house they want to. And so however they start, and they can jump between houses, come back to the initial one, however they want to do it, you're going to use this to help explore those good things, those worries, and those hopes and dreams. And in the resources section, there is an explanation on how to use it. So if you forget, you'll always have that to refer back to. And so then, of course, after you're exploring their worries, you want to ultimately allow the child to make the decision. So with ongoing uncertainty, you can let them know that there's not a rush and you want them to feel good about taking their photo. And you could talk about it next time if that would be okay with them. If they say no or they are uncertain, do not proceed, of course, with scheduling that photography session. And if they say yes during the role play, then of course you just want to have a brief discussion afterwards to confirm that they do want to have their photo taken by an actual photographer. So just some considerations for this age. As we talked about, the child might fear saying no to an adult, especially if choice isn't modeled in their home setting. So just make sure that you really focus on those opportunities for that child to say no, even if it's with other smaller decisions that you'll be working with them on. Also, it might feel overwhelming or the child might lose interest if you try to do this all in one meeting at this age. So consider having the initial consent conversation in one meeting. Maybe in another meeting, you could talk about the heart gallery photo listing and community galleries. And then maybe in another, you could talk about the photo shoot and video process. So this doesn't mean that you have to do separate meetings outside of the times you already see them. You could do this just at regularly scheduled times where you see them. And then, of course, we want to have separate conversations with each child in a sibling group. And the reason for this is you just want to make sure that you're giving them the opportunity to make the choice that they prefer without influence from their sibling. So let them know that they'll have individual photos, but also group photo taken together. So it's okay if one sibling doesn't want to be photographed and the others do. Now we're going to look at 8 to 11-year-olds. So here we want to use age-appropriate language. And then we want to include visual aids and role plays as needed. And again, consider spreading out the consent conversation over a few meetings. Maybe it won't take as long as with the younger ones. It just kind of depends on that particular youth. So defining consent at this age could either include a role play as we discussed for the previous age group, or it could just be a verbal explanation. So here, understanding the child's developmental level is going to help you make the best decision as to how you want to work through this with them. So when assessing their developmental level, just keep in mind that some children might have a cognitive or emotional developmental age that is higher or lower than their chronological age. So you want to make sure that you're explaining consent to the child based on their developmental age, as opposed to just their chronological age if they differ. So for this age group, 8 to 11 years old, you're going to break the definition down in easy to understand terms. So an example would be consent means saying yes to something because you want to, not because someone is making you. You could provide an example here for them so that they could understand. So when you ask your friend if you can borrow a toy and they say yes, that's them giving their consent. It means they're okay with it. If they say no, it's important you respect that too, and you have the same choice. You can say yes or no to things. So as with the previous age group, you're going to want to explain why consent is important. So consent shows that we respect each other's feelings and decisions. And to help a child connect to the feeling, you could ask them how they'd feel if someone walked up and took the toy away, like we did with the previous age group, compared to how they would feel if they were asked for permission. You also want to, at this age group, demonstrate to the child that they can change their mind at any time. So you'd say, even if you say yes to something, you can change your mind, and that's okay. You won't get in trouble if you want to play with a friend, and then you change your mind and you decide you want to play alone. And then again, you want to check for understanding by asking them questions, and then of course, ask them if they have any questions and answer them as well. And then once you're sure the child understands consent, you could explain the photo listing process to them like we did with the younger ones. This will look a little bit differently for this age. So you're going to explain the Heart Gallery in simple terms, that it's an online photo album and a community photo gallery where kids can share their pictures and stories with people who want to adopt. Your story means sharing things you like to do and things that are important to you. And so that is you explaining the what to them. And then you want to show photos of their children their age on your area's Heart Gallery website. So going back to the same website we referred to earlier, going to your region. And then it's helpful if they can see kids their age who have gone through it, so they can see what the photos might look like, what the story might look like. And so you're explaining that to them. And then you want to make sure that you explain adults who want to adopt come here to learn about the kids. And if you're on this page, they can learn about you. And so that is explaining why to them. And then because this page is public, other people who come to this page can see your photo and read your story too. So that's explaining a potential impact. And you can, of course, expand on this as needed. They might have more questions or concerns, and so you would just explore that as well. And then you want to ask those open-ended questions to check for understanding. So that would be something like, can you explain to me what you think might happen with your picture and story? And this gives them the opportunity to explain it in their own words. And then once they explain it to you, you of course want to ask if they have any questions and answer them. And once you're certain they understand, make it clear again that it's their decision to participate and that they can say no without any consequences. So for example, it's completely up to you if you want to be in the Heart Gallery. And if you don't want to, that's okay too. And then finally, of course, you're going to ask for their permission to be featured. Would you like us to take your picture and share it here too? And depending on how they respond, you can be sure to let them know that they are free to change their mind as well. And then again, carry out that conversation to the community Heart Galleries, and then to potentially going out of town if that feels more comfortable to them. And then of course to the video discussion if they are going to have a video recorded for television. And then once the child understands and agrees to be featured in the Heart Gallery, just like with your younger ones, you're going to want to explain the photo shoot process before obtaining their consent to have their photo taken. So you want to explain the process in language that they can understand. So for example, now that you understand the Heart Gallery, I want to explain to you what it will look like when we take your photo. We're gonna select a place to have your photo taken, then either me or your CASA worker or a transporter is gonna drive you there, and a photographer is gonna meet us there, and they're gonna help us find a good spot for you to take your photos, and then they'll take pictures of you with their camera. So here again, we wanna emphasize to the youth ahead of time that the photographer won't be making them do anything that makes them feel uncomfortable, that they can say stop at any time, so kind of walk through that process with them. And you want to demonstrate that the child can change their mind and that they do have choice throughout the process. So make sure they understand that they can say stop, right? And their decision will be respected. And also let them know that they can see their photos and they can decide which ones will be used for the art gallery. So if they don't see any photos they like, they could ask that those photos not be used. Maybe they want to take additional photos and they could do that as well. So the goal is just for the youth to feel comfortable throughout the photography session and to have as much choice as possible. And the best way to aid in that comfort is giving them the full details of what that session is going to look like and answering all of their questions. And then, of course, exploring those potential worries. So just like in the previous age group, pay attention to body language. If the child seems hesitant, you can explore that. Sometimes I feel nervous when people take my pictures. Do you feel nervous about it too? And so you can process those feelings just like with the younger age. Again, asking those open-ended questions, and you could use that 3 houses tool we talked about to explore worries with this age as well. And then finally, allow the child to make the decision on whether or not they would like to participate as well. Now, some considerations for 8 to 11-year-olds is that you want to acknowledge their feelings and provide reassurance. So children this age can have very big feelings, but they don't always have the words to express them. So if they're excited or nervous or uncertain, acknowledge it and let them know it's okay to feel nervous or it's okay to feel unsure about this. Your feelings are important. And they might still fear saying no to adults who are in positions of authority over them. So just reassure them that their decision will be respected no matter what it is. So an example would be emphasizing, you can say yes, or you can say no, or you can say, I'm not sure yet, and that's perfectly fine. And then you want to be patient with this age and give them time. So they might need time to process the information before they can make that decision without pressure. So just make sure to emphasize, especially if they aren't sure, that you can take your time to think about it. You don't have to decide right now. Or even something like, if you want to talk to someone else that you trust about this before deciding, that's okay too. And we can talk about it next time. And then again, with this age group, you want to have those separate conversations with each sibling in a group so they don't feel pressure from other siblings to make a specific decision and that they're able to make the decision that they want on their own. So now for the final age group, 12 to 17-year-olds, this is going to look like a different conversation. You're going to want to have a more in-depth consent conversation, including the practical and emotional aspects of consent. And you're going to be able to still use, of course, role plays and visual aids as needed. So if you know or suspect that their developmental level is impacted, you could refer to the guidelines for the 8 to 11-year-olds to make a decision about which approach would be best. Of course, even in the younger age group, if this would be more appropriate, maybe an 11-year-old, this conversation might be more appropriate for them. You could decide that as well, knowing the child that you're working with. And then, of course, the conversation could occur in a single meeting with this age group, but it could also be that it could take place over a few meetings as well. So for this age group, you're going to use more straightforward terms. So they might already have a general understanding of the meaning of consent, but you still want to be certain. So you could define consent by telling them consent means giving your permission for something to happen or agreeing to do something. It's about making a choice freely and willingly, and it helps us build trust with each other and respect each other's decisions. For them, you want to be specific in explaining that consent is informed, voluntary, and revocable. So it is helpful to introduce these words to them and explain the meaning of each of these terms in a simplified way. So consent should be informed. So this means you have enough information to know exactly what you're agreeing to. And if you don't understand something, you can ask questions until you do. Consent should be voluntary. So this means you agree without feeling pressured. An example of being pressured is someone guilt tripping you. This means they try to make you feel bad or guilty to get you to do what they want. Another example would be someone to try to get you to do something because it makes them happy. And basically they're pressuring you because they want you to do what they want instead of letting you decide for yourself. And lastly, your consent can be revoked. So that means you can change your mind at any time, even if you already said yes. And then you want to demonstrate to them that they can change their mind. So similar to that younger age, you want to provide examples that are relevant to their age and experiences. So for example, if a friend tags you in a photo on social media, you could set it up in your settings to either approve it or not approve for a picture to be on your profile. So approving it is giving your consent, but if you change your mind later, you can take it down. So that lets them know in a real life example that they can change their mind and what that looks like. You also want to make sure you address peer pressure at this age. So here we want to focus on the importance of youth making their own decisions. So you could say, sometimes friends or others might pressure you to say yes. It's important to make your own choices and only agree to things that you are comfortable with. So it's okay to say no if you're not comfortable with something. And then of course, with this age, you also want to check for understanding, have them explain it in their own words, and then of course, ask them if they have any questions and answer those questions for them. And once you're sure that they understand consent, you want to get consent for the heart gallery again. So you're going to explain the heart gallery, its purpose and impact. So for this age, it might be something like the Heart Gallery provides an opportunity for children and teenagers who are considering adoption. We share your photos and stories on the Heart Gallery website and sometimes also in social media or in the community. And adults who want to adopt or other community members can come to see it and learn more about you. So you want to show photos of youth their age on your area's website again, and let them look through the photos and read through some of the posts so that they can get an idea of what exactly they're agreeing to when they're being featured on the online gallery. And then emphasize that their participation is voluntary. So you want to make it clear again that there's no pressure to agree. So for example, it's your choice whether or not you want to participate. If you don't feel comfortable, you can say no, and that's perfectly okay. And then again, you want to check for that understanding. So ensure that they're understanding what they're agreeing to, but also the implications. So by agreeing to this, you're giving us permission to use your photo and story to help connect you with a family looking to adopt. It's important you understand what this means and that it means your photo and story are going to be seen by people online and also in the community. And so you want to ask questions to make sure they fully understand the information provided and let them ask you questions in case something's unclear. And then of course, ask them what they understand about the Heart Gallery and how their photo will be used so that you can check for that understanding in their own words. Ask if they have any questions and answer them, and then finally request that permission to be featured. So would you like us to take your picture and share it here too? So once you receive their answer, let them know that they can change their mind at any time. So if you agree now, you decide later you don't want your photo on the website, just let your caseworker or CASA worker know, and we can take that down for you. And then just like with the younger ones, you're going to walk through those conversations as far as what it looks like if their photo is going to be in a community heart gallery, the option to have it displayed out of town if they don't want it in their community, but they're still okay with it being up, just not in their town. And then of course, if they're having that video recorded, you're going to explain what that's going to look like for them as well. And then if they agree to be featured, you're going to explain the photo shoot to them as well. So you're going to explain that process in depth. You're going to explain that you're going to take that photo, where it's going to be taken, who's going to transport, that the photographer is going to meet you there, and that they're going to be able to have the opportunity to see the photos, choose which photos they use, take additional photos, you know, if they're not happy with any of the ones that are there. So just walk them through that process. And then demonstrate that they can change their mind and have choice throughout the process, and then explore those potential worries and questions with this age as well. Make sure, again, that they know ahead of time that that photographer isn't going to make them do anything that feels uncomfortable. Make sure they understand that if they do feel uncomfortable, they can say, stop, I don't want to do this anymore, and that you're going to respect their decision. So the goal is for the youth to feel comfortable throughout that session and have as much choice as possible. So that is providing those full details, answering all of those questions, and letting them express any thoughts, feelings, and concerns that they might have with you. And once everything is addressed, then of course you're going to ask whether or not they would like to participate and allow them to make that decision, of course, reminding them that they can change their mind. So considerations for this age group is you want to provide detailed information and respect their autonomy. So this is offering that more comprehensive explanation of what it entails, including potential benefits, potential risks, letting them know that yes, your story and photo will be seen by people who are interested in adoption. This could help connect you with a family. It also means your photo and information about you will be public. So acknowledge that their ability to make those informed decisions and express their preferences, letting them know they could say yes, no, or maybe later, and that you're going to respect their decision. Encourage open dialogue at this age and address any privacy concerns because they might have them. And so invite them to share those thoughts, concerns, and questions, and be prepared for those deeper discussions. So ask them, what do you think about being in the art gallery? Is there anything you're unsure about? And if they have any privacy concerns, you could say, let's talk about what information will be shared and how we can protect it. So specifically when it comes to the narrative, they'll be able to see the narrative by looking at the Heart Gallery website. So they might have questions over what's included in that narrative, what won't be included. So you can refer to the TEAR guide as far as how to write those narratives so that you can inform them on what can be included. We also have a strengths-based training about how to write those strengths-based narrative every other Wednesday. So you could come to that. Every third Wednesday of the month. So you could come to that as well, but just make sure you're familiar with what's going to be in that narrative and what won't be, so you can answer any questions that they have. And then of course, give them time to decide at this age group. So avoid pressuring them for an immediate answer. Allow them to take the time they need. Let them know that there's not a rush and that they can take time and think it over. And then just like in the previous age groups, have the separate conversations with each child in the sibling group. Now, you're also going to let them know that you have a form that explains everything that you discussed. So I want to quickly show you that form, and it is on that resources page on the website. So this is the Heart Gallery consent form. So once you've done the conversations with them, you're going to go through and complete this form. This right here is room for their name, for their age, and it's saying that they've reviewed and discussed what the Heart Gallery is and how it's going to be used to support them. They understand that they can tell their caseworker or CASA worker if they want to change this form at any time. And then you're going to go through these options with them. So essentially, you're going to have had that conversation with them, but this is just confirming that you understood what they said, clearing up if there's any confusion. So they have the option of, yes, I would like to participate in all of the activities below. No, other than photo listing on TEAR, I don't want to participate in any recruitment activities with the Heart Gallery, or I'll participate in some activities and I've selected the ones I would like to do. And if there is variation in which activities they want to do for that third option right there, you would have them select which specific ones they want to participate in here. So the options are the photo on the online gallery, the photo on social media, photo in community Heart Galleries in their city, photo in community Heart Galleries outside of their city, and then the video that will be recorded and shown on TV. And let them know that there might be other recruitment events, but this is just for the Heart Gallery. And then you'd give their signature and date, and then you would sign and date it as well, and you would give them a copy of this form. Now, just briefly, there might be a couple of different instances. So this section is to be completed by the adoption caseworker only, and you would check if any of these situations apply. So perhaps the youth stated that they don't want to discuss recruitment and they don't want to complete the consent page. So you're just saying here, I've selected no, other than Tara, I don't want to participate in the recruitment activities on the youth's behalf. So you're just checking that to say that this is that particular situation. And then the other option is if there is a youth that has a disability that might impact their ability to provide consent, then that is where you would go to this option where you have involved the youth in the decision-making process according to the guide and training is to the best of your ability. The youth is a person with a disability that might impact their ability to provide consent. I understand that having a disability in and of itself does not automatically prevent this youth from being able to provide consent. I've staffed this situation with my supervisor and collaborated with the youth support network, so their CASA, their attorney, their therapist, etc., to make this determination. And a joint decision has been made that considers the youth's safety, well-being, and long-term benefits. So based on this assessment and our joint discussions, I've selected I will participate in some activities and chose the appropriate activities on the youth's behalf. So this just lets the Art Gallery know that you as a team have selected these particular activities and why, but that you've made this joint decision together and haven't just decided alone without staffing with your supervisor and talking to the team. So you're going to explain that form with the youth, review each item, and then make sure they agree and provide them with a copy. And that is going to be the final piece of it. So do you have any questions? And also let me put my, so this is my email up here as well, if you do need to get in contact with me. And just to let you know, we will have that link for you again and make sure you get it as to where the Art Gallery guide is, the resources that we talked about in the training. And then after this training is over, or this webinar, excuse me, at some point we'll have this on the website as well for you.
This is Kara from Art Galleries of Texas, and I just want to, for our Art Gallery people on the call, I know this is a lot of new information, and some of these things like the form haven't been discussed yet, and so y'all may be like, wait a minute, where is this coming from? So I just want to reassure you that there are going to be some additional conversations about this on our monthly meetings, and that we can talk about, you know, how to implement this, because I also know that some of these conversations are DFPS responsibility, not yours. And so we're going to talk about how this is going to play out in practice. But, you know, I know that y'all just took in a lot of information, and I just want to reassure you that we're not expecting immediate compliance. This is a best practice that we're setting forth, and we know that we're going to be working towards this gradually in all the regions. And so you will get additional guidance from us and also additional training around this.
Thank you, Kara. I appreciate that clarification. Hope that helps if any of you have any questions about that.